siren.
Essendon winning their first flag since 1965.
There's the siren to win the game, and Essendon are premiers for 1985, winning 2 in a row.
Away goes Michael Long. Oh, what play! It may have been touched on the line. No! Zaharakis has kicked a goal. The Bombers are in front of the G.
To Watson, who emerges with the football. Some icing on the cake. Oh, what a finish!
Heard! The fairy tale's complete after a horror week. James Heard, you are a genius.
The players have come back and they've been really ready to train, really chomping at the bit. They've come back in good physical shape, good mental shape. Everyone's come really ready to get better and attack the season whenever that came. And now it's here, we're sort of even more focused, which is great.
That is assistant coach James Kelly talking about where the Bombers are at. Now they're back in full training, full contact. As I said last week, it's getting exciting as the season gets that little bit closer, and even just listening and reading to some of the things that James Kelly said in the press over the last few days, it's hard not to get excited about perhaps that Essendon are in a little bit better shape than what they were when we started the season all the way back in March with round 2 to start next week. Adam White is my name, part of the Working Through It podcast for the Essendon Football Club. A big show coming up today. Zach Merrett, one of the Essendon stars, will join us, as will one of the former Essendon stars and captain Brendon Goddard. He'll join us and get his thoughts on what perhaps is possible with Essendon going into the restart of season 2020. Now, don't forget also, we're going to do the text messages a little bit later on, so a chance to really put our team under the pump with the best 5 receiving a $150 voucher thanks to our friends at Coles. That number, 0416 90 50 52, if you want to send a text through the guys. We are live, so send them through and we'll get to the best ones a little bit later on in the program. But let's get straight into it and go straight to the CEO of the Essendon Football Club, Xavier Campbell. Now, where I am, I'm back in the studios, but just sitting relaxed on a couch situation is Xavier Campbell today. Not at the desk, just sort of sitting back. Hello, Xavier.
Good afternoon, Whitey. Jim, Jobe, it's good to be back again. I'm in the kids' playroom. Have a look at this. This is where I find myself amongst all of the kids' toys. I've been booted out of my office. I decided not to go in the office today, and there's that much noise coming out of the living area down there that I had no choice but to retire to the kids' room. It's the best I can do.
I know, I've done plenty of meetings in kids' bedrooms over the last couple of months, and then when the kids barge in, that's when it becomes a little bit problematic.
Very true, very true. And I reckon at some point today, it's just a matter of time. They've got this unbelievable knack to being able to find you wherever you are in the house, wherever you are in the backyard, and I apologise in advance.
Very good. James Heard is in the same spot he is every week. Herdy, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Whitey. Xavier, Jobe. It's good to know that Xavier's relaxed and in shorts and a t-shirt, and Jobe's just walked off the catwalk model of New York. If you can see what Jobe Watson is wearing right now, I actually think he's got mascara and colour in his eyes by the look of things. But you are looking absolutely resplendent, Jobe, and it's good to see you. You know, you've been looking a bit bushy and woolly in lockdown, but you've come out with a bang. New haircut and all, I think.
Explain what you're wearing, Jobe, for those that can't see you at the moment. He's usually a t-shirt.
I'm wearing a collared shirt and a coat. I had to do some filming at work today, so that was the reason for the get-up. But I used to do this thing when I was playing on a Friday. I used to get dressed up, deliberately overdress on my way to the club for training, just so I could entertain the players. And because I did cop a little bit of flack about my dress sense, so I would make a special effort every Friday for the guys, and they certainly appreciate it. So I thought I'd do something similar for you guys today as well.
I thought you were just dressing like that because that's what Brendon Goddard sort of dresses like usually when you sort of see him out and about. Anyway, boys, over to you. It's all yours.
Interesting to see if Brendon fits into his T-shirts anymore, but
Jobe, that's the ultimate criticism. You dress like Brendon Goddard. I mean, seriously, cop that.
I am looking forward to having Brendon on. He's always very intelligent football mind, and it'd be interesting to hear his take on the team this year, and also, what his expectations of the season are going to be. But Hurdy, interesting. I think we start off with, obviously the footy clubs preparing, players are back, getting some training in. But one of the interesting things has been the debate with the NRL and the AFL. And the NRL, Pete V'landys making these bold statements early on that they were going to return to play. Effectively being able to meet all these timelines that he's put forward. Do you think that there's been, it's negatively impacted the AFL and its image in Australia, because they've always been presented as being the number one, the most forward-thinking organisation in the country, and they've sort of been, surpassed in terms of how they've been able to get the season up and going from an NRL sense?
Yeah, it's interesting that if you read Sydney media, Queensland media, Victorian media, South Australian media, is the perspective you get. The Sydney media is definitely trumpeting the fact that they've won the battle, and that Peter V'landys has got the code back and playing. And to be honest, and who knows how it's going to play out. Good on him, really. I mean, the fans want to see football, and the Sydney fans and the NRL fans are watching their teams probably 2 or 3 weeks before the AFL. Personally, I don't think that negatively affects the AFL. I mean, they've made the decisions based on the state government recommendations, and I don't know this, and Xavier might be able to inform us, but I think the AFL and the state government here are hand in hand, and they don't make decisions too far without each other, and that probably will help the AFL going forward with political representation or deals going forward. But back to the NRL, good on him. He put his chin out, and he certainly got whacked by everyone in sundry. How it plays out in a year, 2 years, the media deal is obviously a big one, and it feels like Fox and Channel 9, won a fair bit of ground in that media deal, and were able to get a good deal there. But if you're you've got to go back. If you're the normal NRL fan who loves watching South Sydney or the eastern suburbs or Parramatta or whoever it is, you'd be rapt because your game's back on TV and you can watch your team. And ultimately, you've got to worry about the players and their health, but fans can watch their teams play. That's almost the most important thing.
And so, do you think you look at how CEOs are treated by sporting fans around the globe, and the NFL commissioner comes out at the draft and people boo him every time he reads out a selection? He couldn't be his stock couldn't be any higher at the moment. It's almost the perfect time to get out, and go, well, I've done everything I could. I've promised everything. I've delivered everything I've said. You guys, the NRL's back. I've got. He could sell himself at the absolute pinnacle of this situation and walk away being, the person who brought football back first to Australian sport. And you only have to look at the TV ratings for that first week. They're some extraordinary numbers. So I know, we're in an AFL sort of centric state here, but you do have to tip the hat to someone who's been able to deliver something. And he did it so in very uncertain times.
Yeah, and Jobe, you're right. Before Xavier answers the question, I think that the big difference between the NRL and the NFL and the NBA to football is the respect we give our CEOs. The X Factor, the respect he's given here, and the fact we put him up on a pedestal, and he has his own radio show. It wouldn't happen in any other sport. So I think you've got to identify that difference, acknowledge it. And sorry, Xavier, jump in and let you answer that question.
I could just tell with the smirk that you had on your face there, Jim, that you were going to go somewhere with that. Can we just take it back to because we run in parallel to our show, we run a WhatsApp group just to work out what we're going to talk about in real time. And when you and I sort of said to Joe, "You're looking sharp today, Joe," he had 2 words for us: always business. He's pretty happy about what he was. He was pretty happy about what he's wearing. To your question, it's sort of. I think you give credit to the NRL, credit where credit's due. First of all, it's not a competition. We're all in it together, and we're all essentially part of the same industry, the same family, and we're all trying to good outcome for the clubs and for the players and for the fans, and that's ultimately what everyone's sort of determined to do. I don't think the timeline of actually returning to play is the only way we're going to evaluate how successful or not the various strategies of the different sports has been. Like, it's realistically, it won't be until probably 12 or 18 months that we'll really be able to all sit back and sort of, evaluate to a higher degree sort of how well we think we've done it as an AFL or NRL or cricket or whoever else. Because it feels like it's quite tactical, the approach the NRL's taken. They've done exceptionally well to get back and play really quickly. And obviously, from an AFL perspective, I've been really happy with the approach they've taken. It sort of seems a little bit more strategic in the way we've gone about. There's much more about alignment. And each has its pros and cons, I'm sure. The AFL, we're going to be playing in less than 2 weeks now, or 2 weeks tomorrow. Sorry, a week tomorrow, which is it's not that far after, not long after the NRL. I mean, I never felt like there was an enormous rush because I quite liked the opportunity to build the potential for crowds to come to games later in the season, and we've seen how quickly that's moved in the last 2 weeks. So where could that be? And could it be that for the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season we could have full crowds? And that was obviously for the key games of the season, the finals games. So both have got, it's not a like for like for the sport. Both have got their unique challenges. The NRL's got an international element. The AFL's had to deal with the challenges of quarantine periods for 2 states in Western Australia and South Australia, which isn't straightforward. But both sports are working through negotiating. I think I said this last week, a plethora of deals that they probably do over a normal sort of 2 to 3 year period. They're doing them in a 2 to 3 month period, and that's challenging. And credit to them all to get an outcome. The broadcast piece is just so essential for your sport. It takes the game to your people. It is the ultimate revenue generator for the sport, and the AFL's in the middle of that negotiation at the moment. It's going to be a really important negotiation for the competition, for the clubs, for the players and for the fans, obviously.
Interesting thing about the NRL too is I think we forget that they lost their CEO too. The CEO is effectively sacked, partway through this. The upheaval if Gillon McLachlan was sacked in that action would be huge. I mean, I just don't think we appreciate how big that was down here. I mean, it's a side event now the game's on, but to lose your CEO in that manner, that'd be almost like losing the Prime Minister down here. That'd be a massive step for Victoria, I think.
I think the Lands is obviously assumed in a sense an executive chairman role. Now, Richard Goddard is the chairman of the competition. He's also the chairman of Qantas, the chairman of Woodside. He's got some big chairmanship roles in the country and across broader business at one of the most difficult times in business. So he's obviously a busy man in his own right. But I think the competition, the clubs are pretty aligned and very comfortable with the approach that the AFL's taken. We'll be back playing, as I said, next Thursday, and I think we're as a competition, there's a lot of big decisions still to be made, but I think we're pretty well placed.
More importantly, Xavier, Horacio Fantasia, is it your fault? I mean, you're the boss. What happened? Did you tear his quad, or how did it happen? And is he far away from playing?
Well, CIOs don't talk about injuries, James. We leave that to our head of football.
Well, give us something. Give your fans, your dedicated fans, something.
It's obviously disappointing because poor old Raz has had a challenging run with injuries. It's not a bad quad, so he's probably going to miss round 1, but it shouldn't be too long after that. I think Dan Richardson spoke to that the other day. It's a challenge. We had Sean Murphy on the show last week, didn't we? He was talking about that fine balance between how hard to push them in such a short period of preparation. You two know that better than me because you played at that top level and you've sort of, you know what's required at where the game sort of sits now, how demanding it can be, both from an endurance but also with respect to repeat speed and things like that and what that does to your body. So it's a challenging one, but it's not all doom and gloom for Raz. It's only a slight injury. I expect him to be back really, really quickly. Joey's made some really good progress in the last couple of weeks, which is great news for us. Obviously, Hep's going really well, and I imagine he's going to be right in there for round 2 selection. So all in all, we're in a pretty good position.
Yeah, I think the Fantasia injury, It hurts mainly because one of the, I guess, criticisms of Essendon last year was their inability to have repeat forward entries and to keep the ball. Their time in possession in their forward half was low compared to other teams and was almost against the trend of scoring. I don't think it was actually deliberate. I think it was more about personnel, but we just weren't able to keep the ball in our forward half. Devon Smith has a huge impact on that, as does Orazio, and then Tip and Woody when he's up and going as well. And so I think when you look at, so Joey's not there, who was expected to be a big source of generating goals. The way to offset that is by time in forward half, repeat entries, and that forward line pressure. And with Raz not there, it just falls on having the right balance and making sure that Dev Smith is there, Tipper Woody is there, and then who's the other third player who can provide real speed and real pressure, because that's how you're going to generate scores. And with shortened quarters, I think that repeat stoppages or centre bounce, being able to generate goals from centre bounces, and then being able to dominate the forward time in forward half, is going to be the two key elements to scoring, because there just won't be time on the clock, and players will be more refreshed. There'll be more ability for players to go at high speeds for longer. So I think it's going to be harder to get the ball from one end to the ground and score, whereas being able to generate repeat stoppages in your forward half and time of possession, I think will be even more paramount to what it was last year. So that's, for me, it's a disappointing in terms of the balance and generating scoring and offsetting what Joey's injury and availability might have been.
Yeah, and I think Jobe as a coaching group, you just want to have a look at your best players, and if you mentioned if you've got Smith, Orazio, Tip and Woody and Joey, you put Zach Merrett's coming up. Zach will spend some time down there. Zaharaka spend some time down there. Laverty spend some time down there. Some different McKernan. You're going to throw different things at the coaches, and I think with Joey and Orazio in the team and Devon Smith coming back after injury, you've got one of the more potent forward lines in the AFL. So it's disappointing that the coaches don't have it, the team doesn't have it. They're going to work around it, but it would have been great to see that potent forward line that the club's been trying to put together for a long time out altogether. And not to say it won't happen later in the year, but I would imagine if you're opposition, you're coming up against particularly those four who are consistently in the forward line, not only from a goal kicking point of view but a defensive point of view, very very hard to match up against.
I mean, you always want your best players playing, obviously. The one thing I'd say, just to further Jobe's point, and again, I don't want to get too deep into the specific football stuff, what the heads of footy and the coaches to talk about that, but one of the key sort of contributing factors to keeping the ball in your forward half and repeat injuries is obviously your team defence. So I'm excited about seeing what the second year of sort of running that same sort of team defence strategy is going to look like for us this year. Obviously, last year it's sort of we took a couple of steps forward and a step back at different times, but we did make good progress, and it's going to be exciting to see what that looks like this year. But to your point, Jobe, you always want your best players playing. So it's fortunate it's only it's a minor injury for Raz, but we expect to get him back pretty quickly.
And Whitey, I think we're going to get Zachy Merrett on the line and introduce him. I'll leave that to you, mate. You're the expert.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're just waiting for Zach at the moment. We're not far away from getting him up. So have you got one more question before we go to him?
Well, I think
this is live radio.
What show are we? Week 8, episode 8. We haven't got any better with this.
Wow, we're actually episode 9. Don't count us short here.
Gosh, sorry.
No, he actually has joined us, so you don't have to come up with an improvised question, because one of the stars of the Essendon Footy Club, one of my favourites certainly, is Zach Merrett, and he's online. I'm working through it on this Wednesday afternoon. Zach, thanks very much for your time.
All right, thanks for having me, boys.
Boys, it's over to you.
Zach, how are you? It's Hurdy, mate. Going very well, mate. Just going to get back into some full swing of things.
Now, two questions. Firstly, you're still working on that ball below your knees. I can see you're not as fumbling as much as you were 4 or 5 years ago. You're still spending plenty of time below the knees.
Yeah, the game feels like it's slowed down considerably from my first couple of years. I felt like it was a bit chaotic, but yeah, a lot of time's been put into that stuff.
And secondly, and I suppose the obvious question, it's not really, we don't hard hitting on the questions, but from afar, and when I was at the club, certainly you were identified as one of the young leaders, someone who I believe would captain the Essendon Football Club in the future, and your professionalism, the way you went about the game, your relationship with the players, just the whole leadership dynamic. Congratulations on your career so far, but how did that make you feel when it happened? And how are you feeling going forward, knowing that you're not part of that group?
Yeah, it hasn't really changed. I guess my attitude towards still striving to be the best leader at Essendon, and still striving to be the captain of the club at some point in time. But I think it was something that was a bit of a shock at the time. I guess fortunate enough to have a number of people around me that give me some good guidance and good feedback. And I think it's just gave me another chance to grow for myself. And I will continue to support Dyson and the other four leaders that are formalised in that group. But it hasn't really changed much from day to day training. And I think for me, it's just about growing those relationships with players on and off the field. And I just guess being a good influence and a positive influence to keep improving the group moving forward.
And Junior, it's Jobe here. Mate, I'm just curious to get your thoughts on how the integration has been back in as a group, and where you guys, whether or not you've got a sense of how prepared the team is as to where you probably were before or going into round one. Is how much of a drop-off has there been? Is there some disconnect between the players just because they haven't been around each other and haven't been touching the footies together for a longer period of time? I mean, where do you sense the group is at going into this round two game?
Yeah, I think it's one of those ones that's going to be really hard to gauge. It's obviously great that everyone sort of is in the same circumstance from club to club, but I think the staff, fitness staff and coaches have a high amount of trust in this current playing group to do the work. And from what training standards been like since we've returned, it seems like everyone has done the work. So I think we take a fair bit of confidence out of the work done pre-Christmas and throughout the pre-season, and sort of have a bit of trust that that work is going to have us in good stead going into round two.
And Zach, personally, your role, I mean, you're 10 days out from the restart of the season. I'm sure you guys have been working on some match-type situations. Is it predominantly inside mid and a bit of forward, or where do you think your role will go? Will change at all, or do you think it's very much what it's been the last 2 or 3 years?
I think majority potential would be probably that mid forward role, but trying to grow my game as much as possible to be really flexible to give the coaching staff as much flexibility as possible. We've got a number of guys that are probably similar to the way I play, and we want to promote. And I want to promote and bring up Darcy Parish and Andrew McGrath and those guys to keep having bigger roles and responsibilities within the club. So, I'm pretty open to playing wherever's going to help the team on game day. And, as I said, grow those younger players as well.
And, Zachy, in terms of the round one game, how did you feel running out in front of an empty stadium? I mean, what was the feedback from the players after the game? You would have discussed, it was great to get a win, but it did feel weird. It felt strange. Have you addressed it as a playing group about what are the things that we should be looking for, what we should be focusing on, the kinds of things to prepare ourselves for that, I guess, lack of external energy that you would expect from a crowd?
Yeah, it was a bit of a strange feeling. It sort of felt like playing under Toll's back of the country again. There was obviously no real atmosphere or energy in the building that we're used to. It was such a big club and such a big supporter base. It was a bit strange. But, I think for us, we focused solely on what we could control. And I think Truck and Dyson throughout the week led that strongly. And then Hurls on game day, kept talking about the ability to focus on what we could control in the field. And I thought we were able to do that for the majority of the game. But, when that siren did go at the end of the game and we did win, it did feel a little bit hollow. But, we'll take the 4 points whenever we can.
And Zach, biggest difference between John Worsfold and Truck? What would you say? What's John Worsfold's greatest strength and what's Truck's greatest strength, and how do they differ and bounce off each other? And what would you say going forward? their strengths are and the difference in the side because of the two coaches.
Yeah, I actually see a fair bit of similarities with the two. I think they're both very calm figures and guys that, promote a lot of confidence and empower people around them to be themselves and be authentic. And something I think we haven't seen too much of a shift in the program due to the fact that they've worked together so well. So I don't see much changing. I think John's ability to work with people is so strong, and I think Truck's ability to come in with that extra game plan knowledge and really enforce our defence, I think, has been super. And I'm looking forward to him and Cara growing that relationship over the next couple of years.
And at half time in a game, who would, in the round one, you've only had one example, who does the talking? Does John still come in and talk at half time, or does that get shared?
I think Truck will take over that for the majority of the time this year. I think it'll be good development for Woosha to be over the back and overseeing it and helping him through that phase. But I think Truck will take over those meetings.
And Junior, just in preparation for the Swans next week, I mean, have you talked much about how they looked in their first game? Has that been sort of spoken? Are we too far away from that game to start focusing on the opposition, or what the expectations will be? Or have you started planning for what the travel will look like as a group?
I think since we've been back, we've sort of just tried to focus back in on the way we want to play and growing our brand as a footy club to highlight that if we can play at our level for a longer period of time, it's going to challenge most teams. But I'm sure coming next week we'll start to hone in on the Swans and what they do really well. We know that they're a one-on-one and contested side that have done it for a long period of time. So, we know we have our work cut out, but whatever the travel arrangements are, I'm sure that won't faze us whatsoever. We're pretty, I think, resilient group and a group that's focused on those 2 hours and the game's on. So I'm sure that won't matter too much.
And Zach, I think one of the purposes for this show is really to try and connect with our members and our supporters who basically, didn't have footy to watch and, didn't have that week-to-week interaction with the players. Have you missed the supporters? Is it given you a greater appreciation of the supporters, even at training, when you're at training and it's freezing cold, it's pouring with rain, there's the handful of, supporters are always there. How have you sort of seen the supporters, or have you seen the supporters through a new light with, with lack of football, but also the lack of interaction with the supporters?
Yeah, it's definitely not something I'd ever take it for granted that, that big support, especially game day. We always have such large crowds, whether we're playing Friday night footy or Sunday. I think we're very fortunate as a club and a playing group to play in front of large crowds. I think the one, like you said, about training is probably the one we've missed, and the school and country visits that we normally go out and visit kids and loyal Essendon supporters is something I've probably missed. And in particular, training, when you get your real loyal supporters coming in weekly, has been a bit strange not seeing them and getting that weekly photo with them every week. So, it has been something that I think we've missed as players, but I'm looking forward to, at some stage, allowing fans back, and it'll be great to get back amongst them.
And sorry, you go, Jobe.
No, I was just about to ask, Junior, was there anything that, during the time that you were off, what you're able to sort of focus on? How difficult was it to motivate yourself to train? And were you able to keep yourself busy in that period of time?
Yeah, well, you came and trained with me, twice, I think, and you couldn't keep up. But for me, it was about shifting my focus, I guess, just away from, the on-field footy stuff just for probably 4 or 6 weeks, and sort of use that time to focus on some things outside of footy, such as personal developments and study and just learning as much as I could in that period of time. And then sort of probably a month out from return, I sort of went back into more footy focus. But I think it was a great chance personally just to keep growing in and outside of footy. And I certainly didn't lack any motivation. You have to think back to losing in that first final last year, and you get a fair bit of motivation, inspiration to keep trying to improve and grow through that period.
Zach, it doesn't surprise me that Jobe couldn't keep up, because we used to have as a group of coaches the worst on track award, and on a Tuesday we used to rotate it between he and David Hill. Seriously, Jobe was a great player, great trainer on a Thursday or later in the week, but my God, on a Tuesday. Was there something wrong with you, Jobe, early in the week that you just didn't like training, or you and Hilly used to take it to a whole new level?
You just carry a little bit of extra soreness from carrying a team on the weekend, heard you? It took me longer to recover.
Good answer. Good answer. You did say that when you Zach, that Jobe used to carry you blokes through the games.
Oh man, he was the only one I've seen so far in my time that could flick that switch game day, and he could lead from the front, but training wasn't his forte.
I'm glad that you started doing the training about a month ago, Zach. You were just starting to get a little bit doughy from what I saw, so probably a good idea to get back on the track.
You probably can't see him, Zach, but he's in a Marnie model suit. He's just walked off the catwalks in New York. He's got a special cockiness about him he hasn't had for a few weeks. So interesting. I think the CEO wants to ask you a question, Zach. He's trying to get in, but we've kept him out.
Mate, thank you very much for coming. Oh, no, I was interested. I'd heard he got in there first because I was interested to get your observations on the Jobe Watson that you played with and the Jobe Watson that you trained with the other day, and how much physically he's changed in your view.
He made sure he ran on the inside, which cuts the corners on the lap line. I remember amazing looking back. I remember my first day at the club. I think I got to stretch Jobe at the time, and I think I was about 75 kilos and tiny, and it was a bit of a pinch myself moment to be walking and training alongside Jobe and Dyson and guys I really looked up to at the time. So it has been an enjoyable sort of 6 or 7 years so far, getting to know Jobe and guys like that through that time, and being a sponge and taking as much knowledge as possible.
One of the things I'll just quickly say about Zach is you get a sense for a player. You can get a sense for a player very quickly when they arrive at the club. And one of the things that just stood out immediately was Zach's intelligence. As a player, and it's a rare attribute to have as an 18-year-old, but he just picked. Not only did he pick things up really, really, really quickly, but he had just a great feel for his vision and his game sense. And straight away in drills, you could just tell him one thing, or he'd witness it one time, and he'd just execute it perfectly the next. So it was very rare to see, and it's obviously why he's just his game has gotten better and better as he's gone.
Well, Zach, thank you very much for joining us, and all the best when it all starts again in less than 2 weeks. It's very exciting.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Zach Merrett joining us, the number 7 from the Bombers. And James, I'm interested in your thoughts, just sort of going back to what you asked Zach earlier about that leadership situation, because he's not the only player that's been in a leadership group and been dropped from it and then come back a better leader and a better player. Do you think that has the potential of being the case as well with Zach, that it actually will maybe not snap him into gear, but make him the player that we all want him to be?
Yeah, look, from what I took from that answer and also from his answer, and also not being at the club, it's very hard, but I don't think it's anything on field or at training that he wasn't in the leadership group for. He's one comment around forming relationships off the field and being better at that. Perhaps that was, probably the reason. You've got to remember it's a player vote. But I would be staggered to think that anything he did on the ground as a player or at training would be why he wasn't in the leadership group, because everything I saw from Zach in my time as coach, I mean, he's as professional as Jobe was, as Dyson Heppel was, as Matthew Lloyd was. Probably he was as professional as Matthew Lloyd was, and Lloyd was the most professional athlete that I ever played football with. So I would think it's only to do with that off-field stuff that he probably needs just, take a bit deeper. But Jobe, you've probably got better insight than any of us.
Yeah, I just, from the totality of it, Hurdy, I think we view it as too much of a negative. It's just some feedback. And I think the Zach that I know, he relishes feedback and he will take it on board, and he will be a much better leader out of it. I think that we're too narrow-minded, perhaps in the industry, is that when someone gets a setback or something is viewed as not how we would have liked it to be or the timeline that we expect, or the circumstances that we expect, then it's viewed too much of a negative. But for me, it is just going to be, it's the perfect platform for him to grow and excel and to become a more complete leader. And there's no one is born a complete leader. It is something that you are educated on. And I think it will be one of the best things that comes from his time in the leadership group. And he was very young to be put in the leadership group in the first place. And I'm convinced that he will become a better leader because of this feedback. And I still believe that he would be a captain of the club one day. And I think that this will be something that he looks back on and thinks, it was such a valuable experience for me to go through.
And is it a situation, this is to both of you as former captains of the football club and both known for being so driven and so focused, that sometimes you can get a little bit narrow on your focus, and as a leader it's making sure you're setting your own standards very highly, but also having that wider view as a leader on what other people are doing as well around a football club?
Yeah, I think this is the thing. Everyone has different personality traits, and they have different skills, and some are stronger than others in different areas. But it is all about building you as in totality. It's not about you come in and you're the perfect leader. You learn these attributes as you go along. And one of the things that I'm probably critical of is when we put young players in as captains when they're not ready, because you're not supposed to be ready at 22, 23. You're not supposed to be someone who knows everything at that age. You learn things as you go and through your experiences. And I just see too many guys get thrust into the position of ultimate leadership in a football club, and the expectations of them that they're supposed to do everything, they're supposed to know everything. And they're unrealistic, and it ends up you're setting them up to fail. I just don't see it's not prudent in my mind, and I really don't believe that this is a setback for Zach at all. I think it is actually an extraordinary positive.
Yeah, I think that the point Jobe makes about, everyone is different. I mean, some people do podcasts in a three-piece suit, and some people wear jeans and a t-shirt. It's different horses for different courses, Whitey.
I think we might just leave that there and take a short break. And on the other side of it, don't go anywhere. Brendon Goddard, talk about opinions. He likes to have them, and it'll be fascinating to hear from him next on Working Through It.
I know a lot of people say it, but you have such a long way off and you come back, you appreciate it so much more. You're so energised, and you just feel fortunate to even be on the track in a main session. Like, you enjoy that so much. And for me, it just feels like I come back playing like a kid again with that love for the game, which is it's just been a beautiful feeling, really. I mean, it's so long you sort of play and get caught up in the week-to-week grind and pre-seasons and then throw in injury, to come back now and just have the body in a really good spot for hopefully a good season ahead. It's really good.
And welcome back. So don't forget Brendon Goddard to join us shortly. And also, don't forget later on, a chance to win $150 vouchers thanks to Coles. You've got to send us a text, 0416 90 50 52. Send it through and we'll get to as many as we can. We might have a bit more time than usual, so in around about 20 minutes or now, we'll get to all of those, and I can see them starting to flood through already. So that will be in about 20 minutes from now. But joining us now is Brendon Goddard, the former captain of the footy club. BJ, you're not obviously playing golf today.
G'day, Whitey. Lads? No. I've been pretty busy of late, as you can imagine, so I had to cancel golf today to chat to you lads and do a couple of other things. But the weather forecast wasn't that kind about a week ago, so I managed to do a couple of things today. I'll use it as a pretty productive day. But I didn't know you host this, mate. You must be a kid in the candy store with childhood hero, Hurdy here, Jobe, Xavier. I didn't know you host this show.
BJ, I love it. It's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. But it's not for me to ask the questions.
Every time.
Yeah. It's for Hurdy and Jobe and for Xavier. So I now just step back and over to you boys.
Hey, BJ, it's Hurdy, mate. Thank you very much for coming on the show, and I'm sure all Essendon supporters really appreciate it. How are you, firstly?
I'm all right, mate. what are we in, like 10 weeks into COVID ISO, and you'd probably say my wife and I are a little bit bruised and battered from getting through the first probably 4 or 5 weeks with 2 kids under 4, but we managed to push through that, and it's a bit of light at the end of the tunnel.
Now, the first question is get off the bat. We sold you the dream. I think Evo and I sold you the dream in end of 2012 it was. What we delivered you was the nightmare. Are you happy you came over, firstly? I mean, I've heard you talk about, through a few different things. How, in hindsight, how do you feel about the move to Essendon in a couple of minutes rather than in the next hour?
Look, I've chatted a bit about this in the last few weeks, to be frank, and there's the only thing, and there's a phrase where I said I wasted 4 years of my career, but in hindsight, we essentially all did. So I know I've said it a million times before. I've got no regrets for coming to Essendon whatsoever. It was the best decision at the time. Our relationship at the start when we first met and got to know each other, Evo, when you did tell me the dream, it was the right decision. So I don't think at any point I really cried over spilt milk in this occasion. But when I look back on it now, when everything's washed up, you could say that the 4 years of not only my career, your career, Jobe's, all the players in the footy club, it was wasted because of what happened. So, but holistically, I got no regrets whatsoever.
We'll get on to happier topics, and it's not just you, the whole playing group through that period. But the one thing that I admired a lot of things about you and your career at Essendon, but was your mental strength. You basically sucked it up, kept it inside, and led from the front, along with Jobe, along with a lot of other players. How did you mentally steer yourself for that position? Because I think, as you know, it's a really good analogy. What everyone's just been through in the world, mentally steeling yourself for challenges that you can't change. You want to get through. You got to work to the best of your ability. But your mental strength was quite phenomenal through that period. How did in a few words, how did you do that?
It was more of acceptance, as much as I was frustrated as anyone and everything that was going on. It's I just kind of accepted the situation, said this is what it is, and obviously in hindsight, when it first started, no one anticipated it to be drag on for as long as it did. So I think in the first couple of months and 6 months, it was all about just this is reality situation, deal with it, we'll get through this together. And obviously as it dragged on, the positivity became less prevalent, but there's different stages of it, as you know, like when the boys actually got banned, and mate, the roller coaster now, when I've actually talked about it with other people, and the details that you do forget about then get brought up later, and you talking about the highs of it when the guys, when we were at the Botanical that time, and the guys when they were found not guilty the first time, like that feeling then was, I don't know, it was just something that will stick with me forever. And then obviously, I don't even know the time frame, but then the lulls and that. But then when the guys did finally get suspended, then there was another kind of change in my thought pattern about the situation where all the senior guys had left and what was my role within the team, and it changed a little bit since those guys left, and then captaining the club, and the acceptance of actually not playing football to actually win was, I think, for all of us as competitors, was something really hard to get my head around, because it was the first time that I probably felt like, I knew, let's be honest, I knew that the team wasn't going to be that competitive in terms of wins and losses. So to get your head around changing the focus of what's really important about development and giving responsibility to others and young kids to fast track their development was a tough thing to do. But once I did that, and I've said this before, 2016 was one of the most enjoyable years of football I've had.
And BJ, it's Jobe here. I'm just curious. Something I've never asked you. How you are, mate? Throughout all that time, like, you could not have had a better teammate. Like as from my perspective, and certainly the other guys who were, in the thick of what it was going on, and you had come in and you absorbed everything, and you would you were going through it all with us together. I'm just curious as to whether or not you had someone, a confidant, or someone that you spoke to regularly externally from the club that you asked for advice or for help from, because it just the way in which you sort of behaved throughout that whole period was it was certainly a guiding. And so helpful to the people who, myself and the other guys. And I was just curious whether or not you had someone that you would actually talk to about or seek advice because of, the circumstances that we were under. And it was probably difficult, for us to talk about how I was feeling or what we should do as a group. But I'm just curious whether you had someone externally that you spoke to.
Thanks for that praise. I did chat. I have done throughout my whole career, even post he being my coach. But Grant Thomas was one I'd always talk to and did talk through that time. So, and he's very. I wouldn't say completely black and white, but there's not a lot of grey with Tomo. So we had chat through all that period. Hurdy knows my thoughts around him, and where I used to pass on messages to Hurdy and a few others around the footy club from Grant, but he's one that I had always chat to. Craig Kelly was another, well also, so through that period chatting to him, and he obviously was close to the situation in his position and dealing with a couple of you guys as management and a few other things. But one of the clear messages was just always remember, like, I was living it, but it was indirectly. It was you guys, Hurdy and a couple others, Bomber, that were like really in it. So I always put that at the front of my mind that you guys were first, if that makes sense. And I was just kind of collateral damage in a sense. So it didn't. I didn't really care much about me. It was more about you blokes. And that was constantly reminded by Tomo and a few guys that it was more about you guys and what I could do for you guys in the footy club.
And I think we'll get off the topic, but personally, Jobe, I don't know how you felt. I think you expressed it in your question, but I certainly felt that the club, that the selflessness that you brought along in the situation was absolutely sensational, and as bad a time as it was to have you around was made it a lot easier. On to bigger and better things. The Essendon Football Club of today. You've watched them play. You've played with a lot of players. I'm pretty sure you played under the job for a while. How do you see the team? And I know you'll be brutally honest. And how do you see the chances? And where do you think where do you think they've got to improve?
I think one thing which was said last week, I read the headline, but the advantage of this start to the season actually will benefit a lot of the guys and the team itself, with a couple of key senior players being injured, having delayed starts to the season. So I think one of the things we do lack is a bit of depth. So I think it's really important that the senior players stay healthy and stay out on the ground. I don't think we've got the luxury of being able to cover a number of senior injuries, particularly longer injuries. As good as the list is now, and has probably as good as it's been, for a while in terms of demographic and age anyway. But I just don't think the depth is there. So it comes down to health with a lot of the players. And one of the things is always, as we know, is the team defence aspect, which I know Truck Rutten has worked on the team, and chatting to a few of the boys that they'd made pretty good strides in the last year or so in that, and they were looking forward to kind of implementing those things this year. So that's one of the main areas, because I think all the pieces there offensively, I think with a bit more maturity and experience, it's all there to kind of to do enough damage. I just think it's the defensive side of the game where they can tighten up and improve to when you look at it, it's probably clean up 3-4 goals a game, which will probably get you another 3 or 4 wins, which is required to finish higher on the ladder.
And BJ, just in terms of where you think footy will look like, do you think there's going to be drastic change? Do you think it's going to be just scrappier early on, but it will work its way out? What are your expectations?
Yeah, I think early, as we all expect, and being past players, is the little preparation they have had going. And even with the whole pre-season, you're always probably a little bit scratchy for the first 2 or 3 weeks in season, and that's coming off post-Christmas, that's coming off 3 months of training. So the boys are, I guess, behind the 8 ball in that aspect. So you expect it to be a little bit scrappy skills. Then you're dealing with the atmosphere and what that feels and looks like. If that has any effect, it's, I'm not entirely sure, but I think as the season goes on, the games will get better. And then the other thing you've got to think about is the health of the players too, coming off a short pre-season. So, who can get through and which team can stay the healthiest is going to play a pretty big role, considering we've got 17 weeks plus finals. So there's not a lot of wriggle room with a few little soft tissues here and there, because it can have a pretty big impact on the team and then therefore the season.
And I think, Brendon, obviously you're a star of the game. First draft pick and best and fairest winner. Played in finals, played in grand finals. But I think you would have been even more of a star without a crowd, because your voice and your feedback to some of your teammates, I reckon, would have made some highlight reels over the time. Because I don't think I've heard a louder voice on an AFL football. Definitely at training.
Yeah, you probably say that. I actually probably wouldn't have minded that, because I think a few of the media could actually realise what I was saying, and I wasn't just swearing the whole time, even though there's obviously explicits in there from time to time. But I've got an angry face at the best of times. I wouldn't have minded that. I would have, and I would have been able to get through to players a lot clearer and quicker than I otherwise would have. With 90,000 at MCG and Anzac Day. But I don't think Jobe was on the end of any of my sprays, to be honest.
Did Bomber actually told me? Well. Bomber told me that when he was, I think it's 2014, that he actually gave you the whistle at training. Was that true or not? Because he couldn't get a word in on a couple of sessions.
There may have been an occasion. It might have been a little walkthrough. I don't know, out in the middle. It was hard to get the whistle off Bomber, as you could probably attest to. But I think there was a little walkthrough there that I may have taken with the boys and had the whistle. So power of position, which I enjoyed.
But it is a fascinating, I think it will be fascinating. One of the things that we will, and I think we heard a little bit in round one, but I always, remember the great Alistair Clarkson teams and just trying to coach our team around the leaders they had on the ground, Luke Hodge and Sam Mitchell, and the way that their voices carried around and moved their teammates around. And I think you'll see, or you'll get a picture over the course of the year about which teams are not only coach-led but player-led out on the ground, and which teams are really quiet, because those teams that have senior players like yourself and Jobe who do try and dictate things out on the ground are very, very hard to coach against. And that'll be a fascinating part of this new season for me.
One of the things that Bomber stressed, I remember he would always talk about the voice and the vocal importance of training and how much of it was actually a weapon. And I think that players underestimated, you probably overestimate how much influence a coach has in the coaching box on game day, and you underestimate how much your voice impacts the games and how much it makes a big difference. And that's why, as you're right, Hurdy, that players that have seasoned members of that group who are self-driven and who can dictate and change things up on the ground, they will become even more important this year. And it will actually be a great part of the coverage, because you'll be able to identify it and see it as someone watching the game.
I think we saw that transition last year with the runner, with the limited times he's allowed on the ground too. So I think, as you're alluding to, I think that'll be a huge advantage you'll be able to see, because some of the great teams I've played against in my time, and you could probably comment as well, but everyone was on the same page. But like Geelong is one that springs to mind. 2009 through that era, 2008, it was almost like poetry the way they communicate, and they knew each other so well. But it was they were just all coaching one another through the whole game, and that's obviously one of the areas of the game that I felt was really important, which I tried to express on most occasions.
BJ, interesting to get your take on Lenny Hayes. Obviously not an Essendon player, but Hall of Fame inductee overnight or over the last couple of days, and just comparisons to Lenny took himself from a very attacking player, and then probably put a lot of defence into his game along the way, and has a great reputation not only amongst his teammates but amongst his opponents. Do you see any similarities in Zach Merrett? Obviously different sort of players, but Zach can take a extremely attacking type player and maybe just tinker with his game a little bit to give him that all-round skill that I think Lenny had and probably got a lot of praise for at the back end of his career.
Yeah, I think I didn't know Lenny that well. Obviously, I was a Campbell supporter growing up, but just prior to being drafted. But it was one of the areas that he actually improved a lot in. Even when I arrived, he's defensive. He's always a ball hunter, and I think the time where Jobe exposed him because of his ball hunting one time in a game. But I think that was prevalent, but what he worked on then is being able to find a balance between his ball hunting and then his defensive side on his direct opponent or a number of opponents he was playing on that time. So it's one of the areas where Zach needs to improve, and he knows that. So, and then to find that all-round game, and it mightn't look as good on a statistic or the stat sheet, because he'll forgo maybe 5, 6, 7 possessions per game, but what it does to help the team and then minimise the effect of his opponent, particularly if he wants to play on better players, it goes a long way to for the team success, rather than not saying he does that, but it's more offense with Zachy, as he knows, as we know. But if you can find that balance, it's gonna help the team in the long run better. So Lenny's a great example. Yeah, different players, but there is some similarities in terms of where Lenny was early in his career and where Zach is. Yeah, for sure.
And BJ, just your take on, because you're incredibly selfless player. You actually came across probably as someone who's very, very demanding and angry on the ground, but it was always striving for the best thing for the team. But it was driven by your mindset and your competitive mindset and your want to win. Just wondering whether or not you feel that this group is ready to demonstrate or has the capabilities to have that kind of insatiable competitive appetite that you saw with your that St Kilda side that came through and almost won a grand final?
I think to be as competitive as I am, and Jobe, you're 90% of the time. Except for it was when the ball was kicked at your ankles, it was on the ground, you did right picking it up. Erdy springs to mind, but Nick Rehot, Lenny Hayes, the most competitive people I know. But I think that's innate. I think that's something you've grown up with and bred into from an early age. But it's one thing I realised that at the Saints is that everyone needs to get to a certain point, and some guys take longer than the others, and they take different roads. And particularly younger guys, when you look, it's a process when they get into the footy club. It's all about, getting comfortable at the club, making friends, and then it becomes about, getting fit and just finding your feet. Then it becomes about trying to get a game, and then it comes about trying to keep your spot in the team. The focus changes. Then when you're comfortable, then the focus kind of changes and narrows, and then so that becomes with experience and age as well. So I think the team's getting to that point where they should feel comfortable where they're at, and then they start narrowing their focus of what's really important and what's going to take them a long way. And I don't think everyone, what I'm trying to say, not everyone can get to that real high, on-edge competitiveness, but I think there's a level that everyone needs to get to for the whole team to be successful. And guys are going to take different paths, and it's up to individuals and the coaching group and the head coach to help them get there. But, I think they're better placed now with just more games in term age. So hopefully it comes to fruition this year.
Beej, it's Xavier, and it's interesting listening to you talk about the competitiveness. Now, you're a big basketball fan as well. Now, we've been talking at different points on the podcast about The Last Dance, and you've no doubt watched that. What's your observation of that? You look at someone like Michael Jordan, and a lot of people praise him, a lot of people criticise him for the way he went about it. But how do you compare that based on your experiences as well?
Well, that's there's I'm ruthless at the best of times, but then that's kind of like, he's a guy that's the greatest of all time. Like, that his kind of competitiveness is kind of like next level stuff. Like, I thought I was competitive and would do anything to win, but that's, and I appreciate that. I loved it as a lot of people did, and other people were a bit. So, it's just another reminder that you can't kind of please everyone. Even Michael Jordan couldn't please everyone. And not like, I'm not sure with you guys, but I knew he's like competitive and all that, but I didn't know it was that extreme kind of thing. So he kind of bared his soul in a sense by doing this documentary, because he knew it was in there. He owned the content. So he opened himself up to criticism by showing all of this. It's probably for a good 30-40 million, but he's kind of bared his soul to show people what he was like and what it took to be the greatest of all time and win 6 championships. So, again, people do it different ways, and he's the greatest of all time doing it one way, but I certainly appreciate it and love watching it.
BJ, has he got more pairs of Nike runners or you?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
How many have you got? I mean, there's rumours going around that you bought another house next door to just put your runners in, but obviously was it 1 or 2 houses?
Yeah, I've got a couple of rooms full. I've taken up half the girls' wardrobe to stock them, and then we had a bit of other junk, but mainly shoes that I've had to put in storage in containers. So, look, I've got about 55 pairs of Jordans alone, and there's probably another 100 pairs lying around of other shoes, so upwards of 200.
Now, I'm sure you are.
Nike, of course.
Yes, I'm sure you're an amazing father, and I've seen you around kids, I've seen you around your wife, I've seen you around your family, and you're an extremely caring person. But I've also seen you around your teammates when they leave a cup around or a little bit of dirt. You have to say you are OCD. How do you handle cleaning up after the kids? It must get under your skin.
I used to go to the airport with the boys and the lads and tell them not to touch the handrails or escalator handrails, and like, this is normal behaviour for me, so I haven't had to change it during COVID. So isn't it funny that now everyone's having to do what I've been doing for years? And so
no different for you at all.
Healthier people, so this hasn't even bothered me at all. So, but yes, mate, the first 4 weeks with 2 kids, I'll tell you what, it was. You talk about being a good father, they'd probably tell you otherwise, because my wife and I were tested to our absolute limits with being isolated with the 4-year-old and the 2.5-year-old inside our kind of 4 walls of home or our house. But it was crazy times.
Well, BJ, thank you very much for joining us. I know that a lot of Essendon fans would be enjoying the fact there's 3 Essendon captains just chewing the fat, talking about footy. It's pretty cool, and thank you very much for being part of it.
Thanks, boys. It's good to chat.
Thanks, BJ.
Brendon Goddard joining us on Working Through It. Sort of real Imelda Marcos type of areas from Brendon Goddard with all those pairs of shoes. That's extraordinary.
I didn't play with putter cups. He had like 35 holders for his putters as well. It was just crazy stuff.
Yeah,
I didn't play with BJ, but the similarities between him and Matthew Lloyd and their cleanliness and not touching things and was just remarkable. I won't dob Lloydie in, but my God, he was a clean freak. I deliberately, I think it was myself and Martin McVeigh when he gave us a key to his house, and we knew that we weren't allowed to wear our shoes into the house. We deliberately Wore our shoes, scuffed a few carpets and ran out again. But Lisa, if you're listening, it was all Mark. It wasn't me.
Now, before we go to the Coles Magic moment and also your text messages, 0416 90 50 52, and there's lots of them are coming through. I'm just interested to both of you because, and also to Xavier, but maybe from a playing point of view first. Brendon's always been a bit of a polarising character, even when he was at St Kilda, even in the media, because he says what he thinks, and he wears his heart on his sleeve. But there have been Essendon supporters that struggled at times to warm to him with the way he was on the field and those sorts of things. So I'm interested, Hurdy as a coach and then Jobe as a teammate, sort of to debunk that theory a little bit, because I know that a lot of Essendon people do get prickly that know Brendon, just how important he was at the time.
Oh, he was a star. I can't see how any supporter can criticise Brendon Goddard. Not only did he play extremely good football, but he had every right to walk out on us after 12 months or 6 months or whatever it was, and rightfully after what he was presented in the situation. And I don't think Jobe and I were overplaying the effect he had on our club through that period. And I'm disappointed for him that he didn't get to play with an Essendon team and for the other players, but because he would have been a genuine star and potentially a star in finals, and with Jobe and with Michael Hurley and with a lot of the other very good players that we had at the time, could have achieved something. But I would find it very hard to believe that any person would be critical of Brendon. And he's a quality person. And the one gripe he used to have to me, and not betraying his confidence, is that coming from St Kilda, we just weren't able to instill the sense of, I suppose, desperation to succeed that he had at St Kilda. And that was probably, due to the times that we're in. But he came to a club to instill that and be part of that. And, we weren't able to do that. But he's a superstar on the field, but off the field even more so for Essendon Football Club at his time at the club.
Jobe?
Yeah, no, Hurdy sums it up perfectly. Everything that he did was from the absolute position of care, it was always genuine with him. He wore his heart on his sleeve, and he was only striving to get better, and he just wanted the absolute best, and that's all you can ask from a teammate. And I don't know anyone that, when they really think about it, would say that he wasn't a great teammate to play with, and the footy club owes him a lot.
Yeah, and I don't know if you remember any of these times, Joe, but probably no one would challenge you on the training track, and no one would challenge him except the two of you, and you need that, and very rarely do you get two dominant figures like Jobe's a captain, best and fairest, Brownlow medalist. But if Jobe wasn't training to the standard, it didn't come down to us as coaches to put it on him. It was Brendon. If BJ wasn't doing something right, it was Jobe. And that's the tension you want in a football club. Your two best players, two of your five best players, whatever, are at each other and hold each other in a high regard, but also have a huge amount of respect for each other. That's what would have led to something very special. But I think Jobe's right. It came from a very, very good place, and a genuine superstar both on and off the ground.
And Xavier, from an administrative point of view, I mean, he was often the one that was put out for press conferences to sort of represent the club and end up being captain of the club. He was the players' sort of spokesperson a lot of the time as well. What were your views on Brendon and his time at Essendon?
Oh, I probably echo the way Jobe sort of described it before. He showed a lot of passion. He wore his heart on his sleeve, but he only ever wanted the club to be better. And he was always trying to find a way. He'd come up. He's a guy who, he didn't just bring problems to you either. He sort of brought solutions. We're not doing this. What do you think about this? Should we try that? And it was that's constructive. And as a leader, as an executive, you sort of want people that are going to do that. But I've said it before. I really would struggle to know where the club would have been in moving through those issues if it wasn't for someone like Brendon Goddard, because he played an extraordinary role in mentoring younger guys, in providing perspective to younger guys, to instilling really good habits to the younger guys. It's hard to get those when you've lost a big chunk of your most important and influential players. And he just didn't complain either. He might say now, I've wasted some time, and he still says, he gives you perspective on that as well, that he wouldn't have changed his decision. But he did not complain at all during that period, Brendon. And he was he felt like, for me, he was like a peer. He wasn't like a player that was sort of reporting to a head of footy and coach and then reporting up to the CEO. He was like a peer. You had good, honest, two-way discussions with him. And, for me, I would have struggled to get through that period if it wasn't for someone like Brendon, and probably vice versa. He was brilliant for our football club.
Fascinating insights into Brendon Goddard. We've got to go to the Coles Mighty Moment next, and then it is your text messages, 0416 90 50 52. Coles vouchers to give away valued at $150, and there are plenty of messages coming through. But this Coles Mighty Moment, I reckon this might be the favourite of mine since we started doing this series.
Lucas leads back, it's in his direction, and he's got it for the left. He's kicked it. And he keeps them in with a slight chance of sending Hurd and Sheedy out with style. Lloyd to Lucas. Might depend on who the injury is to, Jared. Tough kick. On the good side for a left footer. Gives it a long go. It's there. 2 goals in 2 minutes to Scott Lucas. Lucas again. Wow. Massive kick in the context of this game. Starts it right, brings it back. Sensational kick, given the circumstances. The Bombers got out of it. Keeps it alive. Lucas in the pocket for number 5. From the pocket, nice off the boot. He likes it. He loves it. He's got 5. And the Bombers have a sniff. Monfries pokes it towards Lloyd at full forward. Off hands. Lucas, can he get through? You bet he can. He's got 6. McVeigh, Lucas. He plays on. Around onto the left like shelling peas from there. And they're still coming, the Bombers. They're inspired at the moment. McPhee. Lucas again. Drops it. Free kick. Gets the free. He'll line up for number 8.
Well, this is just unbelievable.
It is hard to understand what has happened in this game, but they are inspired, the Bombers. Lucas has 8, and the Bombers could steal the most unlikely victory of the year.
It was one of the most extraordinary individual performances in a quarter I think the game has ever seen when you look back on it. Scott Lucas kicked 7 goals in 1 quarter. 7 goals in the final term against West Coast. It was supposed to be Hurdy and Sheeds' swan song there. It was all meant to be about them, and Scott Lucas popped up and did something quite extraordinary. Hurdy, can you just explain, did you actually know what was going on as Scotty was just going completely ballistic?
Look, it's a vague memory the whole game, but Scotty, what a remarkable player he was, and when he got on song.
No, we've lost Hurdy there. He's just lost. This isn't meant to be the most important part of the show when he was talking about Scotty. We'll get him back on. What can you remember of that, Jobe?
Yeah, I remember. I flew over to watch the game because it was Hurdy's last game and Sheeds' last game. So I was in the stands and just sitting there thinking, because West Coast were sort of a fair way in front, and it was hard to see how we were going to get back into it. And then Scotty just kept getting the ball and kicking goals, and all of a sudden the lead that West Coast had just started to diminish, and we were a real chance. But it was quite a surreal thing, because West Coast were preparing for a final series and we couldn't make the finals. So, and obviously the momentous sort of occasion of Hurdy and Sheeds' last game, and then Scotty's just come out and just gone whackety whack in the last quarter and put 7 away, and you're just thinking, and quite nonchalant as well, and it's just quite an extraordinary sort of term of football, and he was a wonderful player, Scotty, but it was an amazing performance in that last quarter.
Hurdy, we'll try again. What do you remember of that 7-goal final haul from Scott Lucas?
I called for a few handballs, actually, Whitey, and surprisingly didn't get any. But no, what a player Scotty was, and when he was on, and unfortunately for Scotty a little bit, he played in Lloydie's shadow, but incredible player. I think 2 best and fairest, and that last quarter was. We were running out just to finish off the game because we were no chance, as Jobe said. They were running into a final series and we were limping towards the end of a season. But, Scotty almost got us across the line.
I think what you've got to remember with Scott Lucas was he won 2 best and fairest, one at centre-half back and one at centre-half forward. There's not too many that do that sort of thing. It shows his versatility as a footballer.
And still doesn't know who his man was.
I thought you were going to say he still doesn't know where his right foot is.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. No, he was a terrific player. I actually remember, I'm not sure what year that first best and fairest was. Maybe it was 2003,
I think. Maybe
3, was it? Yeah, and
or 4.
And
yeah.
he was struggling on the forward line. Like, he struggled for a few rounds, and Sheeds put him back, and then just had an incredible year. His ability to read the play and mark the footy was never in question. But terrific player.
All right, time for the text messages. The rapid-fire text messages. We've got 5 Coles vouchers to give away, valued at $150 each. 0416 90 50 52. There is a lot of text messages just saying thank you for you guys for what you're doing to Essendon fans and keeping them distracted through a difficult time. But I think they're just enjoying the insights into your thoughts on footy and the thoughts on the Essendon Football Club. So I'll kind of try and collectively put all those together. We have absolutely read them all, and the guys appreciate all the support. So it's probably best to just leave that there for the time being. But specific questions, and I do really like this one, and this is from Jess. She says, go Bombers. She said, to James and Jobe, as past captains of the club, what's the one piece of advice you received during your time that you would pass on to Dyson Heppel as the current captain of the club? I like this question.
The bit of advice I got, I think it was from David Whedon, in fact, who was a coach at Essendon, was be your own captain. Don't try and be someone else's captain. Don't try and be Mark Thompson, who was before us, Gary O'Donnell, Tim Watson. Be James Hird and do it your way. And that gave me a lot of confidence, and then also enabled me to reset my sights on how I wanted to lead the club with the support of other people.
Yeah, I think the best piece of advice I got was that you can't be everything to everyone, and you've got to be able to delegate, and you've got to be comfortable in doing so. And it's tough to do. It's tough to sort of release control and to step away. But that is the thing that I think gets you undone, is when you try and do and be everything to everyone, and you end up just failing at all the little things as well.
Okay, a question here from Beverly from Greensborough. This is for Xavier. Apparently you were sent a footy montage during the week by Danny. Now, can you tell us a little bit about what that is? You seem to know what Beverly's talking about.
I can't help but feel Justin Brodsky or even Jobe and James are probably behind something like this. Danny put together a beautiful montage. Yeah, exactly. We got to cover, which we might. It's actually interesting because we should probably pivot to the artwork behind you at the moment. White is quite interesting.
Yes.
I'm not sure if the listeners can actually see it. We've got a nice image of Jobe and Inspector Gadget together, because there's some similarities in that, Hurdy.
There are, but did you just say the listeners may not be able to see it? Did you actually just say that? I think you're a highly intelligent man, Xavier.
Sorry. We have got a live audio on this, but then we have a replay with a bit of video. So apologies for those that are listening. If you watch it on replay, you will see it. Sorry.
No, Jobe's got an alpaca wrapped around his shoulders. I think that's basically the best description of what that is that he's wearing. But, I must say, Xavier, that when I got to the Essendon Football Club, Tim Watson was the best dressed man in town, and he took all the young players down to Chapel Street, fitted them out, made sure that they didn't know where their country. We all come from the country, we all look a bit daggy. He'd fit them out with the retailers around town. So it is surprising that with a father who is the best dressed man in town, that Jobe did think that was okay to wear.
Well, I'm glad that you referenced my fashion sense, Eddie, because there was a period of time, I think you had a personal sponsorship with Zegna, is that right? I remember you being dressed always very, very well. But there was this, and I think Xavier's going to put it up on the website during the week, it's just a moment where you went for the straightened hair look, and I'm looking forward to putting that on the website just so that people can remember what it was actually like for you in the late 90s, early 2000s.
That
very
was
funny.
one of my finer moments. Joe. But back to the montage you're talking about there, Whitey. I think that should go up on the website as well, because the X-Man has some serious thighs in that photo.
Yeah, well, just be careful, Hurdy. That's all I can say. Just be careful with what you say. Based on what I'm looking at the moment, I wouldn't be something's just say come across my desk that's sort of taken me aback.
I think the legal team might have to get involved here.
The next question. Sorry, a bit distracted there. There was this is from Marie Therese, who said that she noted that Tom Bell Chambers said that Joe Danaher moving out of town has helped him, perhaps to get away from the spotlight or away from the pressure of it all. Probably that's for you, Xavier, to explain exactly what's happened there, because a lot of talk coming out of the club recently has been quite positive about how Joe's feeling about life, about footy, and about the club.
Yeah, I said that a couple of weeks ago. I mean, obviously it's topical, and people want to talk about Joe a lot for obvious reasons. We understand that, but he's he's out at Daylesford now, and he's really enjoying it. He's his own man. He's a bit of a free spirit, Joe. I love him. He's one of the great guys to have at our footy club, and I hope he's there for a long, long time. But he's making good progress, and he's continuing his rehab. I think he catches up a bit with Tommy out there at Daylesford. They may have done a bit of training together out there as well, and he's probably got some good balance and good perspective during this period. So Joey's going really well.
All right, now a serious one here, and this has come through from Helen, and I'm not going to read it all out because it's probably a little bit long, but what I will read out is this. Hi, Working Through It team. Your podcast has gotten me through this enormously taxing period, which we have all had to face. So I just want to say thank you. To Jobe, your resilience in the face of extreme hardship has given me hope in my darkest times with anxiety and depression. And while this will be likely embarrassing for you, I have a little mantra, what would Jobe do? And that helps me get through it. So she just wanted to say thank you and go Bombers. So that's to Helen. I think that's quite a nice message, Jobe.
It is. It's very, very kind of her to say. And, I think that everyone is going through some tough times, and I think there's always ways that you can get through things, as difficult as it possibly is. And very, very humbled that she thinks like that. So I'm sure that we could potentially get her a voucher or something, Whitey, to a Coles voucher to say thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting why it's same question I asked myself when I get into the wardrobe. I worry about that. I do. I walk into the wardrobe and ask myself that same question. What would Joe do? I do the exact...
I'll tell you what, Joe, the thanks we get for helping Xavier out here is it's just jumping out at me, really. But you too can wear a red jumper, Xavier, if you'd like one.
There is a jumper that's just popped up on the screen.
Oh, jeez.
They're really they take a liking to this, don't they?
They have small minds, I suppose.
Very
Joe,
immature, very immature
very,
of a CEO of a football club, I would have thought. But we'll have to get that photo published at some point. Now, let's move on, please. We've got to get a little bit of seriousness.
I'll tell you what, if I track Adrian Dodoro down the next couple of days...
Yes. Anyway, Sam Draper. Is there a chance that he will be the number one ruck by the season end? Obviously, he almost went to St Kilda. He stayed, which I think is great. But where's he at, and what could he potentially do? That's from Gully and Headland.
Yeah, well, I think so, Sam was tracking really well before. Obviously, did the ACL, and I still think Tommy has a presence about him that he's the number one ruckman. The only way I could see Sam taking over the mantle is if physically there was Tommy had an injury or something like that where he wasn't able to be out on the ground. I still think that when he's up and going, he makes a huge difference to the side, and he's the number one ruckman. I think that a big man coming off an ACL injury is going to need a fair bit of time to play and get the confidence back, and it's going to be challenged to do so with with limited VFL or what that looks like, the second tier competition. So, I think that he might be able to come in and play a game or two, but I don't know that he will be the first ruck choice even by the season's end.
All right. Shamal asked a good question here. It's probably more for you, Hurdy, and that's around the mindset of the players through sort of that golden era, I guess, 99 to 01, where you were for large parts of it so dominant. Of those memories, what are some of the learnings that this current crop of players might be able to have to help take that next step for this team to potentially be a premiership team?
Yeah, I think what people forget about that sort of mid 99 through to 2000 and 2001 was that 1998 wasn't 1997 we missed the finals, 98 we got knocked out in the elimination final against North Melbourne, and the start of 99 we were sort of building. So that period we actually built our self-belief through some hard training through John Quinn. We won some games that probably people discounted, and we started to get belief. To the point to 2000 where we had a mentality that we just couldn't be beaten. But that just doesn't come from thinking you can't be beaten. That comes from actually testing yourself against your teammates in training hard, playing and getting results. So I think that the mentality the players should be having at the moment, not to tell them what to do, but is basically you build from hard work and you build from getting little wins and you build from trusting each other. And then you get that sense of that you can go out and win every game. So I think at the moment they're still in that building phase about learning to trust each other and learning to learning to trust each other that when they're needed they can work and do things for each other. So that's the stage I think they're in.
All right, and one last question here coming through from Jesse and Tom. Question to James Hird. How is Tom travelling and what he needs to do to take the next step in regard to potentially getting a game?
Yeah, Tom's a fair way off. He's worked very hard over the break. He's sort of going to back off for a little bit of time and put on a bit of weight. And he gets a bit sore after some of the sessions, so he needs to work pretty hard on his football. He hasn't played football for a while, so he's a fair way off, I'd imagine, being even in consideration there. But he's just got to start proving himself around the club and working hard and getting back into a footy mode. But no, I think he's a fair way off. But as I said, I'm not as close to the team as other people.
Is it? I'll ask this question, but it's the last question I'll ask. Is it hard for you as dad, and the fact you are who you are, with Tom coming through, that are you kind of wanting to take a backwards seat a little bit, or is it hard to find the right role for yourself in this situation? Giving him a bit of space. How would you?
I mean, Tanya and I suppose we're his parents, and we just want the best for him. That's really all. And he's still our I shouldn't be embarrassing, but he's still our boy, and he's we're very proud of him for everything he does. But we understand that he's now in the AFL world, and he's got to fight for everything he gets. So, like everyone else, he's going to work hard and fight for it. But from a parent's perspective, we just want the best for him.
All right, we're going to finish the show with someone that's been waiting very patiently, and we tried to get to him last week and we ran out of time, and he's holding on patiently now, and he's a 9-year-old Essendon fan. His name is Xavier. It's not Xavier Campbell, it's Xavier Bond. And Xavier, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
No problems. Now, I'm sure you've got plenty of questions, or a question you want to ask James, Jobe or Xavier?
I do.
Go for it.
Coach take more risks in this season than a normal season?
That's a good question.
I think if I heard the question right, will the coaches take more risks this season than in other seasons? Is that correct? I think they will. They'll need to. I think they'll need to. Whether they take more risks, they'll be more adventurous with the way they coach because they've got less time. The games are less games. You can really be out of the season in 5 or 6 weeks if you don't take those risks, if you don't win games. So I think every coaching staff will be throwing everything at their players, everything at the game style, and trying to get wins very early. So I think maybe not risks, but they'll be much more adventurous than perhaps they would have been in the past.
Great question, Xavier. Who's your favourite Essendon player, mate?
Adrian Johnson is coming to get you.
Yeah. And why do you like him so much?
He's kicked lots of goals since 2010.
Fantastic, Xavier. Well, great to hear you coming and having a chat to us, and all the best with the Bombers this year.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're hearing plenty of kids in the background at Xavier's house at the moment.
My apologies.
I think it's no. I think that's the perfect time to wrap up the edition of Working Through It on this Wednesday afternoon, guys. Thanks very much, and I can't still get over the picture.
Hey, Whitey, if for the best caller, I've actually got an old red jumper at home I could probably donate to the best caller, if that's okay. So let me know if you want me to sign it and send it around. But what I can't do is get that hair straight again, unfortunately.
I am completely stunned that you've actually still got that jumper. That you've got.
Can I just ask you one question, Whitey? Because I know, are you complicit in this? Because I know I've got two. I've got two I'm gunning for, probably three, but where are you sitting in all this?
No, I'm putting my hands up. I don't know anything about this. It just appeared. And
thank you.
Yes. So talk to the bloke that's laughing at the moment.
I think it'll be a long time before we talk.
Oh, no. All right, guys, we'll catch you next week. The last episode next week with the season on our doorstep. It'll be episode 10. We'll do it all from 4 o'clock next Wednesday afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your nights. We'll catch you again soon.